Oh my god.
Can you check and make sure it's?
Oh yeah, I can check. Well, now it's a different stream channel though.
Yes, it is. It's just
Damn
a
it.
different video.
You're an ass.
Cause I tried this.
No, here's your 53-second sexy video. Live now. Is that it?
Should be
Starting soon.
starting.
Start it out. There has to be a way you can control it starting.
I'm broadcasting. That's
Maybe
all
it's
I
like
had
a
to do before.
delay of 10 seconds or something.
You're delayed.
We're good. Sorry for the delay, everybody.
Sorry for the delay. Don't hit us too
I'm
much.
not on camera yet, right?
No. Well, that's the problem.
I honestly don't know.
Alright, let's go into the office.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're gonna be so jealous that you gotta drive through the snow.
We are good to go.
Yeah. Okay. We're live.
Should be good.
It's delayed. We're live enough. All right, everybody. This is the act you've all been waiting for. Arthelo. All right.
I'm gonna move around a lot. That's okay. I don't like talking behind desks, but either I'm looking at these things or I'm looking at here. So I'm Arthur. Hi. Before we get into introductions any further, basically I want to set the stage on what we're going to talk about tonight. Okay. Talking is something I do pretty regularly. I'm awful at it. Okay. It's something that I love doing, but I hate doing it at the same time. Okay. So I'm treating this as practice, right? You can't get better at something unless you do it. So that's like your first lesson tonight is like put yourself in uncomfortable situations. For me, this is uncomfortable. Okay. But we're not going to make it uncomfortable. We're just going to treat it like it's a meeting at work. Okay. I have a lot of those. I spend maybe 30% of my time in a room with the doors closed or talking about stuff. Maybe one day it's about a feature in my game, or the next day, like part of our building caught on fire and we need to like figure that out. I don't know. So just so you know, I'm not a pro. I don't run the circuit or anything like that. I'm just here to talk to you because Austin thought it was a great idea to invite me. What was he thinking? Why'd you guys vote him in? I'm not sure.
You ran.
Think a little hard.
Yeah, I didn't have any competition.
So if I suck, it's his fault. Okay?
Thanks, Austin.
Can you guys hear me in the back?
Yeah.
Guys and girls? All right. Awesome. Me and this guy in the back are on like the same wavelength right now. So I'm just gonna talk to him the rest of the time. So yeah, it's like I had to think a lot about what I wanted to talk about today. Because there's a lot of things I know. There's a whole hell of a lot more things that I don't know. And I could certainly spend weeks standing up here and lecturing you guys on what it's like to be a game developer, the types of problems I face every day, et cetera. But a lot of those won't apply to you right now. I think what does apply to you is what some of you guys are, guys and girls, I'm just gender neutral there, are trying to accomplish while you're here at school. So show of hands, who here is a programmer? Awesome. Maybe, I don't know, thinking about it?
A little bit.
All right. Who's an artist? Nice. Anybody who wants to do production? No? Maybe? All right, cool. That's good. Don't rule it out. Someday you guys will make awesome producers, but not yet, okay? Because you don't know what you're doing. You barely know how to program. Maybe you barely know how to draw. You're probably really good. A lot better than me. But let's see. Any other discipline I haven't named somebody wants to do out of school? Nothing?
There's audio. I'm
Nice.
interface designer.
Interface design. Awesome. Okay. And that's a little different than art, right? Especially at the place I'm from, Filament. It's, interface, just so everybody knows, you might think that's the same thing. But I can't deal with raw assets from artists. If they send me like a Photoshop file, I don't know what I'm doing. I need a tech designer or a technical artist to like take those assets, convert it into something that's usable for me as a programmer. And they do a lot of that. They also do a lot of things like usability, right? Where should a button go? Up in the upper right-hand corner? I don't know. Whose idea was that? It wasn't mine. So it wasn't the best idea. So again, I'm Arthur. I come from Filament Games, an educational games company down in Madison, Wisconsin. We've been around about 9 years now. I was employee number 6 or 7, I believe. And we're now at 45 people, okay? That was going on 6 years ago now. And I started just as a programmer, and now I am the engineering director. So you guys can make it, that's for sure, right? Yeah, I hope so. I got really lucky. So I've worked with a lot of people. So it's like, you know, education games. Who's heard of Filament? Just real quick. 2 people. Okay, some of you. That's okay. I would say like there's so many companies out there. I have no clue they exist. And that's pretty much the case for the games industry. You have big hits. A bunch of people get laid off, you know, companies go under, et cetera, and then they form back up, right? Usually it's just groups of friends. So you're well within your realm of like starting your own companies. You need an idea, maybe you're not friends. No one's friends with Austin here.
Damn,
I caught that, don't stop. Anyway, so I've worked with a lot of people. I've worked with a dozen more that aren't up here. I've won a lot of awards, so that's why I'm talking to you today. Some people have I have some semblance of what I'm talking about. Before we launch into today's topics, I wanted to let you guys know where I get better, okay? Where I get better every day is doing my job, okay? I have to solve not only my problems, but the problems my company faces. I have to solve problems that my engineering team run into on all their different projects that they're working on. And at Filament, that's like 6 projects at any one time. My record is 5 projects at the same time. Don't ever do that. You're stretched too thin. But to begin, I read a lot of books, okay? You guys probably read, you're like at the part where like the age where you're gonna stop reading, I think, except for like the bookworms out there. I stopped reading for a long time just because I was in school. I graduated, then I had a program. That's what I did every day. I didn't care. I played a lot of games, right? That kind of fills the void. But books are great, okay? That's why I'm here talking to you right now, right? Everybody in this room believes, maybe, that I have more experience, and so I can share it. That's where I get a lot of knowledge from books. I don't just like take it as fact, but I will read it, and then try and digest that book and apply it in my own work, in my own life. Just a tip, if anybody's taking notes, whatever, Creativity Inc., okay? Read that book if you haven't. Read it while you're in school still, and you'll have a much better understanding of what it means to run creative teams, okay? And the challenges that they face. A really good book that I actually read in college is Masters of Doom. I don't know if that's required reading material for you guys. Another great book, okay? And that tells the story of id making Doom and Quake and all the troubles and tribulations that team went through. I read a lot of Gamma Sutra as well. It's pretty much just a repository of blogs written by other industry veterans, and that's awesome. And really, again, you're just reading about problems that those people face in their companies. It might not apply one-to-one with what you're doing at that time in your life, but you could probably always learn something from reading about challenges other people have faced and overcome. I read a lot of LinkedIn Pulse, so something that I'm interested in probably now more than ever before has been leadership, right? How do I lead a group of people? That's a very different problem than learning how to program, learning how to draw, doing interface, doing sound design, testing products. Leadership is totally a different way of thinking. It's a different skill set. And LinkedIn I read mainly because there's a lot of thought leaders on there. They write a lot of good articles about managing people. It might sound boring, but stay with me here. And imagine you start a game company. You just start working on a game with a group of your friends. There's 3 of you. You keep working on it. Suddenly, you know, $2 billion later, you've sold out to Microsoft and you're running like a 100-person company, right? at that time, 100 people that you are responsible for, you are not making games, okay? You're responsible for 100 people's livelihoods. You're running a company. That's totally different, okay? If you want to run a company, do so. If you want to make games, sell and keep doing that like Matt did, right? I read a lot of Polygon. I used to read a lot of Kotaku, just for like industry news. But Polygon I like better. It's just styled so much better, and I like the editors and reviewers there. And I read a lot of Reddit, like most of you. So, again, before we jump into topics, I wanted to share with you what I think it takes to be a good game developer. I think to be the best kind of game developer comes out of somebody who's creative, okay? Not just like, hey, I have a lot of creativity, I can express that in art and stuff, but I can express it in multiple ways. Maybe you're a programmer and you like writing code all day, that's fine. But if you only write code, I don't think you're gonna make the best game developer. If you only draw, you're not gonna be the best game developer, okay? And then all the other disciplines, etc. What you need to do is make things every day in your life, doesn't matter what it is. Carpentry, right? Working on music, perhaps. Let's see, digging into the other disciplines a bit. So if you draw, program, right? If you program, learn how to draw. You don't have to be a master at it or anything like that, but if you don't have the drive to just be creating things all the time, you're not going to be the best that you can be. Because all those things kind of overlap. So this is a screenshot of my freshman game, okay? When I was a freshman back in 2005. I'm not that old, but, and I just wanted to show like what a bunch of creative people did using just ASCII art, right? We made a really awesome dungeon crawler here, an open world environment RPG. I've made things with math, okay? That's all this is, just math. I know how to model, okay? I don't do it often. There's people far better at it than I, but I can do it. I make music, make a lot of music. That's probably my second passion in life. And I'm just sharing that with you guys. Like, I am a game developer, right? Not a programmer. I make games and I make other things. I also talk, okay? I also teach people things. That's probably the greatest joy I get out of life is realizing that what I have said made an impact on somebody and they suddenly understand something that they didn't before, okay? I teach every opportunity that I can. Here I am at GLS last year, for example. That's the Games Learning Society Conference down in Madison, Wisconsin every June. Go if you can. If you're interested in educational games, if you're interested in just understanding that space a bit more, definitely show up. Let's see. I'm going to send out these slides afterward. You guys can take a look at these links. I won't play them for you now. Maybe I have time. I don't know. I'll just do it.
You want audio?
Nope, it's fine. It's fine. So here's an example of a game that I made in like 2 hours. Okay. I'm not saying you can do the same, but what I am saying is you can make games, right? Just start. This is in Unity. You can pretty much get a good idea of what's going on from the video. But that took me like 2 hours, right? What you don't want to do is graduate from here and not have any examples of what you're able to do. I'm not going to hire you, right? No one else is going to hire you. We need to be able to see that you can do the job you're hired for. You're not getting a chance to show that. Take all the time that you have right now, because it's free time. Yeah, you have classes. Yeah, you have like running your life, and some of you are really new at that. That's okay. You mastered going to the bathroom and a toilet. Make games. I made this last week because I had to teach a bunch of people how to use our new workflow for TypeScript. we just converted our JavaScript engine, and I had to like prove that I could make something. So I took 2 hours, and that's all it took. This is really simple.
Oh my.
But it's just one of those image things you mouse over, it breaks apart. There's a lot of doges.
Wow.
My point here is this is cool, right? If you don't have this kind of stuff on your website, like, why should I call you? Okay, you don't have to like copy this whatsoever. I think this is like dumb to some degree, right? And so do all of you. I've made much more impressive things, and it's not like I got a job making this. My point is, it took like 1 to 2 hours. It might take you longer. That's okay. You're not going to get better unless you do it. Okay. I feel like everybody in this room could make this in one day, if given the time and the resources.
Such code.
Such code. Yeah. Thank you. I'm gonna skip the skip. I'll let you guys get it for that. Basically, it's like a helicopter. Runs around in Unity, flies around. It's super fun. All right, so the topic of today. No, wait, this isn't. We're gonna talk about league.
Wow.
We're gonna talk about what small teams get wrong, because I think that's maybe what you guys want to know. And if I can take a step back for a minute, every time I show up to a meeting at work, there's an agenda, okay? There is a goal. We need some sort of actionable outcome from that meeting, else we're just wasting everybody's time. My goal today is to impart on you some lessons that I have learned. I'm not gonna ask, but I hope a number of you, your goal today is to take some of these lessons. Some of you might totally know them, that's totally fine. It's not like it's rocket science, but I want you to apply them. Hopefully they are useful to you when you're making games, either now or in the future. So, what's necessary to make a game?
People. Time.
People, time, idea, effort.
Organization.
What was that?
Organization.
Organization. I'd say those are all pretty necessary.
Motivation.
Hard work, that's it. Okay? Why I showed you really simple examples? It's not a lot of hard work. Okay? You can do that. If you do a little bit of hard work every night, you can make something awesome in the end. And that's what game development is a lot of hard work. Having a great idea is just a start. And you know, personally, I like taking a great idea maybe 20% of the way, proving that I learned what I set out to do, and then I don't like finishing it. I do that because I'm lazy. I don't like working. I don't like working hard. I think it's just a trait humans have. So creating games is hard work, okay? There's not a single game out there that I'm just like dying to finish, ever. And I've made maybe 30 games, ranging from like 3-week projects to 2-year-long MMOs, okay? Hate the last 90% every time. Because it's just problems, problem after problem after problem. Luckily, I like to solve the problems. All right, we got a suffix to the sentence. What do you guys think? I don't know either. I'm not sure. Still figuring it out. But I do know what all successful games, at least the majority of them, have in common, other than luck and hard work. And that's the first lesson for today, really, is what you guys need to do in order to make your game successful, okay? And you could apply this however you want. Maybe it works best your games that you're going to make here at Stout. And if you're not taking any classes to do that, do it on the side, right? You got to start now. Don't wait until you've graduated. So step 1, envision a goal. You can't make something unless you understand what it is you're making. You need a plan for how to get there. The beginning is super easy, like I said. The end, super hard. Everything's going to change along the way. And because of change, you're going to iterate, and you might change your mind a number of times. I started a new game Sunday on my own, because I just had an idea. do something. And on my drive up here, I changed it up crap load. And now I'm gonna go back to my computer later and be like, well, what am I doing? I'm already iterating and I'm not even making anything. And that's awesome. That's happening all the time. Pivoting, we'll get back to it, but really that's just a drastic iteration. But pivot is more like, hey, we're going this way. We're gonna do 180. We're gonna go this way. Something that's embodies the original idea, but might be completely different. And that happens constantly.
Oh, yeah, good thing.
So envisioning a goal. Back to leadership again. My goal, if I have vision for a game, is to transfer that understanding to everybody else on my team, right? We need to share that vision. Here we've got a bunch of people. This is a game I worked on back in the day. This is just a load test, so we all look the same. We're just like stressing this over out. But we're not all facing the same way. Trying to get 30 people in a room to follow directions during a load test is incredibly difficult. Pretty much impossible. But that's what you have to do in real life, right? Get everybody facing the same direction towards that same vision. So you need to provide clarity, not only for yourself, but for your team. You need to share that vision because, you know, you don't. The thing I hate most about like someone who doesn't understand game design is that they are the designer and they make all the decisions, because that's not true. Everybody chips in on the game. And all of those people are going to have good ideas if they all understand what we're trying to achieve. Okay? You might not all agree at the same time, but you're all trying to make that same game better. It's all about communication. Really, that's like 90% of it. The rest is just actually drawing something or programming something. There's an entire discipline devoted to communication, and that's production. Okay, you will make a lot of money just helping others talk on the phone. Maybe you guys are familiar with this picture. I just wanted to show it again. This is what we're talking about when it comes to shared vision, communication, being on the same page. This is really hard for you to read. It's okay, you don't have to read it. But in the first panel here, it says how the customer explained it. So we have this teeter-totter ladder thing going on, hanging from the tree. And then everybody involved with creating this thing had a different idea of what it was supposed to be. So communication at the beginning of your project is super, super vital. That might be obvious to you, but in practice, it doesn't come naturally, okay? Especially on young, immature teams, okay? Just people who want to make a game, but they want to make the game they want to make. You need to make the game your team wants to make. Documentation. So this takes a long time to learn. Has anyone here written a GDD? Yep. Thank you. So game design document, that's still taught in school, and that's fine. I think it has its place. It's something to learn about. You might know it as like a game Bible, etc. They exist at a lot of companies, but a lot of companies have a lot of designers, and they can update that material. What we do at Filament, and we're not alone in this, is we document in our tasks. We document with tests. What is a test? That is just a requirement of accepting that a task is complete or not. It is the definition of complete. So if my designer is like, the character will jump, me as a programmer, I'm like, that's cool. How high do they jump, right? How far can they jump? Can they jump while they're running? Can they jump over things, etc.? I have all these questions. They should be documented, right? Naturally, you would write this in your GDDs, okay? But what happens when we implement what's in your GDD, and then through testing, whatever, you're just like, forget it. Like, jumping doesn't work without jetpacks. But you're lazy. You don't want to go update your GDD. You know, it would be best to, but like, who's reading it? You'll find that out quickly. No one is. I read a GDD once, and then I never open it again. Because it's useless. It's out of date as soon as it's done. The game has changed, okay? So I document in tasks. A task for you guys, like in practice, when you're working on your teams, and I don't know if you have classes about this, so listen to what your teacher says for sure. But something I did in school and I think it's really useful because you don't have the exact tools that we use in industry. It's just like Post-it notes, right? Write a task on a Post-it note, right? Exactly like the character will jump. Bam, throw it on the wall. That's something you have to get done that day. Having tests or requirements, like how does the character jump, that can be explained with additional Post-it notes if you want. Maybe write that somewhere. Again, I wouldn't write it in your GED. Ideally, what you're building a game off of is a living, breathing list of tasks, okay? And each task can be expanded to show the details inside. However you achieve that, do what works for you. All teams are different, and that's also a lesson. That's a good point. So scope. Some of you guys are gonna dream super big. Don't. We will get to an example in a second about dreaming big and what happens in reality, but start with a small scope. If you don't understand what scope is, it just means like, what is the game, right? Is it an MMO, RPG, FPS? That sounds pretty involved. Is it, some small little mobile touch phone with like one mechanic? That sounds like an awesome game to me. Make that one because you're probably gonna finish it, okay? You're not gonna finish your RPG, MMO, FPS. And maybe you guys have totally heard that before. You're gonna say, whatever, I'll be different. You're not, okay? You will fail. And that's fine, okay? I fail all the time. You guys are gonna fail a lot. And ideally, you fail less as you get older and more experienced. But really, you're just learning what not to do. What I'm not gonna do is run out and try and make my dream game, okay? I have yet to do that. I had a dream. That's why I became a programmer. I have yet to make that game because I know I can't do it alone. And I'm not ready to do it. Okay. It's a text-based game. So small scope. Think really small. A trick that I like to do is think of a game loop. Okay. That is like, what does the player do at the beginning, all the way to the end, and then they like repeat it. Okay. So in Candy Crush, you're just matching 3 tiles together, okay? That's it. But you do that a crap load of times. How long do we think it would take us to like write a grid of tiles and make 3 in a row match and more fall in? Maybe a little bit, but certainly less time than an MMO, RPG, FPS, okay? A heck of a lot less time. And I like that. I like small game loops. I'm not saying go copy Candy Crush, but small game loops ensure that you can iterate. Because the first time you implement that game loop, it's going to be shit, okay? The second time, maybe it's going to be a little better. Each time you're focusing on something to change and improve and get feedback on. So I challenge everybody in this room, when you think of your game idea, maybe you're working on one now, and maybe you're like, oh crap, it's probably too big and we're not going to finish it. Trim it down. Make the smallest possible game you can, because you can always add to it, okay? And as a hiring manager, I want to see things that are polished, okay? And when I say polished, I don't mean like it's got to have beautiful art. You don't need an artist on your team. Having one totally helps, but it needs to be polished. It needs to not look like a pile of crap. And college students, frankly, are really good at making piles of crap. I don't blame you, right? You gotta like feed yourself every night. You need to do your homework. You got to worry about your classes and tests the next day. I had all the same worries that you guys did, but I put some time and effort into the games that I was making, and I failed a bunch for sure. But I'm just letting you know, as an experienced game developer, start small and add. Okay. So imagine you wrote that GDA, and then you made that game, and you made it perfectly. Okay, you did every task that you set out to do. It doesn't matter what the scope was or anything like that. You finished your game, and it's perfect. It's exactly what you wrote in your GED. Okay, that might be a little different than what you envisioned in your head, especially if you're working on a team. But that will result in a bad game. Okay, hands down, bad. I can predict. I don't even need to know what your ideas are or anything like that. They're terrible. Okay, they can become good though. And that's my point, is that every good game that you've ever played was super, super, super shitty when they first made it. Okay. It's getting a little weirder, I guess, like nowadays with early access on Steam and Kickstarter launches and opportunities to play games that aren't finished yet. And maybe there's a bunch of those out there that you really like and really enjoy. And you're like, well, this is a good game. And I'm not disagreeing, but every game that I've ever made and every game of any of my friends, and I probably have a friend in almost every major studio you guys have ever heard of. All their games are horrible before the release. Okay? So, it's like, how do we become good? We'll talk about that. To drive my point home a little bit, some of you might be a little too young, but this is StarCraft Ghost. Okay? It was an FPS Blizzard made. They never released it. Why? Because it was shit. It was awful. Nobody liked it. It was not fun to play. It was not innovative. It was not unique. Nothing about it was compelling. They canned the entire team. Well, not the team, but the entire project. And they went to work on something else. Luckily, Blizzard could survive that. Don't can your own games. You're still in college, right? Finish them. But I'm just letting you guys know it happens all the time. BlizzCon was last weekend. Blizzard announced Overwatch. I don't know if who here saw that video or is familiar with whatever. That game is Titan, just so you know, right? It's not like, oh, that's a revelation to you or anything like that. But Titan, a game Blizzard has been working on for 10 years, they also canned that. They have 2 huge titles that they just said, nope, they're not shipping. Because they're awful. They weren't going to make any money. They were like, what are we doing? Wasting our time working on this pile of garbage. Let's make something that's good. Sometimes you can't save games, unfortunately. I think Titan, they did a really good job, if that is indeed true. Just making it smaller scope, maybe, and focusing on things that are fun, what matter to the player. So here's 2 screenshots from a game I made that's released on Steam right now called Reach for the Sun. The image on the left is the prototype that I built, okay? It was fun and cool. The thing wiggled around. It was all made out of rigid bodies that were connected together. And it kind of proved that we could build a plant out of physical pieces that had collision and swayed in the wind and stuff like that. But it was bad, right? Like, it took a long time to get to the screenshot on your right. The screenshot on your right actually is a picture of strategy mode, which wasn't even in the initial release of the game. It was something that we did not devise until after we got feedback from the Steam community. So we're going to talk a little bit about my junior year game, Ruin. Okay? This is all my art, again. Haha. Learn program. So Ruin was my big idea junior year. I got to be the designer, okay? And that was super cool. But something that they didn't teach you at DigiPen, which is the school I attended, is that being the designer doesn't mean that you are the knower of all things that the game is about, and you have dictatorship-like authority over your other team members. But that's what everybody, I think, thought. And I had this vision for a game that was much like World of Warcraft Battlegrounds, and we did not get anywhere close. Why? It was risky. It was our junior year, so we're a bunch of noobs. For those who are in their junior year, it was our first 3D game, okay? And I wrote the graphics in it. There's graphics, that's amazing. But they're not very good. My roommate's on my team, okay? That's a good way to lose some friends, probably. You guys could probably do it. I'm not saying everybody's the same whatsoever. You know, don't shy away from like making a game with your friends, because that's what you should do. But I mean, if you eat, sleep, and breathe in the same space as your teammates 24/7, go to the same classes, work on the same game, conflict will arise, okay? And hopefully you know how to deal with it over time. Let's see, we didn't have any artists. So like, what are we doing making a 3D game that I want to look like World of Warcraft, right? We don't know how to model any of that stuff. And at the time, on average, I was taking 18 to 20 credits in this case, okay? That's a lot of school. It's like a lot of school. What was I doing? Remember that flick game that I showed you guys earlier? We could have just made that. Maybe we would have gone to IGF. Maybe we would have like won. I don't know. Maybe I'd be a millionaire. I wouldn't even be here tonight. I'd be on my yacht or something. But I didn't because I was an idiot. I was just a junior in college, and I had too much stuff to manage outside of making the greatest game known to mankind. So this is what was in my head. And this is what the game ended up looking like. It's colorful. At least it's got that going for it. You move these little robot guys around, you float in the air. You could shoot 3 different weapons. That was kind of cool. We even got a health bar in. That's like, wow. However, every year there are teams at DigiPen, and there's probably some teams here at Stout that impress the crap out of things. Okay, they make games that I'm just like, even now, I'm like, wow, that's impressive, right? That's amazing. Those are the teams that have communicated their vision across everybody, and they're all pointed in the same direction, and they understand what they're creating. Okay. They also understand either the balance between, well, they understand the balance between their time and the scope of the game, okay? There's some impressive, like, large scope games out there, especially coming out of game colleges nowadays. But those kids are putting in the hours, okay? So if you can't put in the hours, don't make that game, okay? You can make something just as impressive, and it can be small, and that's totally fine. So we just talked about envisioning the goal. So we're going to talk a little bit about planning how to get there, okay? It's one thing to understand what you're making, but if you're starting at the beginning of your semester with 0 code, 0 assets, 0 anything, and by the end you want some phenomenal game that impresses not only your friends and family, but hopefully your future employer, hopefully you have a roadmap. You don't want to get to the end and realize that like 90% of the work is still undone. And then I'll surprise you, like, just all happened. This is Philman's process. That's big. We can go back and look at it. Maybe it's not scary to some of you guys, but each of these little boxes is like a different thing. It's ridiculous. We got there after 9 years of really hard work. We could have got there sooner if we had hired more experienced people that knew what they were doing. Building a game company from scratch is very difficult. That's why I read a lot, right? If I can't hire that person because it costs $100,000 a year, hopefully they wrote a book and I can learn everything that I possibly can from that. So I don't want you to use this process whatsoever. It works for us, it might not work for you. And that's what's really interesting at Film. This is our process, and it does a lot of things for us. It solves a lot of problems, mostly in the realm of communication and understanding what people are talking about at any one time during development. But it does not apply equally among all our teams at our company, okay? We have about 6 teams or so that fluctuates depending on team size at Filament, but they do not all follow this religiously, okay? They change it here and there because everybody's different and everybody needs either more support or less support. Once you've worked with the same person for a long enough time, you kind of understand how to communicate with that person better. And you're not so reliant on the process anymore. So here's a process that I came up with that I think you guys can implement here at Staff. Okay. Again, you might totally take a class on like game production methodologies. I don't know what it's called here. Like that. And they're going to teach you a bunch of things. They're like, how Scrum run? What is Agile? What's waterfall, etc. These are all process names. But I'm just like, this is like simplified Agile for you. Okay, I don't even want to use the word Agile because that means a whole bunch of stuff, and people on the stream or some pro game developer, someone's going to watch this and be like, that's not good. But that's okay. This is like a plan I think you guys could use. And it's really close. It hits all of the right points. Yeah, there's 5 steps. I can't make it any less if you want to cover all your basics. But here we go. So prioritization. I mentioned earlier in this talk that ideally you're working off of a big list of tasks, okay? That task list needs to be prioritized. Things you care about at the top. Things you care about less towards the bottom, okay? That is your living, breathing description of what your game is, okay? And it fluctuates all the time. Because some people have new ideas, they insert tasks in, okay? Every time you do that, where does that task go in the list of tasks that we want to implement? You are going to run out of time, okay? You will not finish that task list. So when you're working on your game, always prioritize. Prioritize your time because you don't have a lot of it. You're worried about everything else that you gotta get done. Making a game is one of those things, but it's really important. And if I only have a certain amount of time to work on my game, it better be on the most important parts. You can see by the notes here, I list defects as well. So that's also really important. And just a side note about defects. A defect really is like any bug, any issue that a user has. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be a crash in your program. Those should be prioritized along with the tasks. It doesn't have to be in the same list, but ideally at Filament, we're killing bugs at the same time we're implementing features because we don't want to end with a really buggy product. So you need to plan your work. You have this big list. Now how do you tackle it? What we do is running Agile at Filament. Typically, we will plan work for the next 2 weeks in the future, okay? That's different for everybody. It's different for every team. At Filament, we will switch it up every so often, depending on team size and what the goal is. But we always come up with a goal, right? Sometimes it's just as simple as we want to do these 10 tasks. Ideally, they're at the top of our list. They don't have to. Maybe you'll pull something up that's a little lower because it's very related. That's fine. You don't have to abide by the top of the list all the time. But you want to estimate how much time that work is going to take you to implement, okay? And you're going to be wrong. You're going to be super wrong when you first start. Hopefully you get a little better. I'm probably 30% of the way there to even understanding how long something takes me. And the only way you get better is by implementing the same thing over and over and over again. So when I see the game must have a title screen, I roughly know how long that takes me because that's in every game that I've ever made. And I'm usually right around the same amount of time. What's super cool is I've tracked that throughout time. The last 6 years, every title screen I've ever implemented, I've estimated, and I can see how that's changed over time. Hopefully I get faster at implementing. But the point is to understand, hey, I've got to schedule classes. I've got a bunch of time to do my homework. I got to work on my game, right? You don't have to estimate, but I'm telling you to do so, and then track how much work did you get done that week, right? If you estimated 10 hours of work and you put in 5 hours of work, you're 5 hours behind, potentially. What's cool is once you've estimated your entire task list, is you can see how late you're going to be on hitting your deadline. Maybe that's the end of the semester, right? That date is going to start moving based on how much work you get done every week, okay? And that's what we're tracking. We really care about that in game development. It might be different on your team for sure, but in development, we only have a couple levers that we can pull that give us more time. And that is, we can change time, we can change scope, or we can change resources, okay? So time, maybe we need more. Usually that involves if you're in AAA, you're going to your publisher and you're like, hey, we're gonna be late. We need more time. They get really mad. Maybe lose their job. I don't know. So don't get in that situation, right? You can control scope. That's something we use all the time. So if we realize, hey, we're running out of time, we're only going to get 50% of our task list done. Will the game be a game if we do that? What should we change? Should we just axe the last 50% of that task list? Come up with a couple other features that tie that game together nicely. You know that halfway into your semester, you're in a much better position than at the end. Velocity here is just a term we use to describe how fast the team's working, okay? So if 3 people on your team are doing 5 hours of work a week, that's 15 hours of work a week is your velocity, okay? If you track that every week, you can see, as you go up and down, that's not the useful part. The useful part really is what's my velocity got to be next week if I want to hit my deadline? And that's how you kind of measure, like, should I be working smarter, harder, longer hours, etc. So the next thing you do is do the work, right? Simple enough. You just gotta get your hands dirty and do it. So next, this is important, and a lot of you are gonna fail at this. You're gonna walk out of this room, you're not gonna do this step, okay? Your game's gonna be awful. The teams that do this step are gonna have the awesome games in your classes, okay? You wanna be on one of those awesome teams, because you want an awesome game, because you want an awesome job, right? All of those follow. So the teams that are playtesting, they're doing the right thing, because they're understanding, hey, not just like, is my game fun to play, but it gives them the ability to prioritize what they're gonna work on next week, all right? Imagine that big list of tasks that we came up with at the start of our game. As I start working down that list and I start playtesting those features that I've implemented, I am going to realize that, hey, our priorities are starting to change. Maybe somebody came up with a good idea or something wasn't working right. We kind of changed our design a little bit. We implemented some new features we had never planned on before. And people are like, yeah, that's really awesome. Like, I like the way the direction this game is going. That design that you're now on is like very different from the original design. And that's the point. The teams that are successful, it's not because they're like, it's not the playtest that makes them successful. It's what they do with the data that they collected from the playtest. Okay, so if everybody that played your game is like, nope, it sucks because of reason X, and a bunch of people are saying that, work on reason X next week. Okay, don't say, well, I want to implement like the inventory and stuff, right? You already have a problem in your game. Work on that. So the retro. Really, that's a time for your team, and you can do this right at the beginning of prioritization and planning. All of those things can happen in the same meeting, okay? Just in order: retro, prioritize, plan. Your retrospective is a chance for you to reflect, to talk about what you guys did right, what you did wrong, and that's really important because that's how you learn, okay? You're also gonna, maybe some of you are rock stars, okay? And nothing goes wrong throughout the whole semester. But someone on your team just keeps running into trouble. Whatever it is, I don't know. If it has something to do with game development, I want to know what troubles are having, because that's knowledge I can use in my job in the future, right? So maybe you implemented your AI system, or you drew the HUD or something, and somebody else on your team was responsible for the other part, and they failed at it because of X, Y, Z. It doesn't matter what the reason is, talk about it, okay? That way you can hold each other accountable, you can help each other out, and creating games is a team effort, okay? It's not about, I'm gonna go to my dorm room and I'm gonna like work by myself, okay? You can certainly do that at times, but I've never known a game team to work independently of each other and have something that's like really successful. Though it does exist, there's a lot of internet companies out there. And a lot of you can probably get on some of those teams, just so you know, go find them. Forever Interactive is actually a popular one for Wisconsin. All right, so the simplified process. If 5 tasks or 5 steps is too much for you guys, I want you to think about it this way. Our process includes a bunch of these words and probably like double that. Sieve it all down to finish your tasks and get feedback on them, okay? That's all you gotta do. Finish your work and then get feedback. Doesn't matter what kind of feedback it is. Sometimes it's playtesters, sometimes it's usability. Are interface elements in the right, place? Are things obvious to the player? Do they need more help? It could be things like your code, right? Have your friend look at your code. Maybe it works, but it's not the best. And it's not like your friend needs to be an expert or anything. 2 people working on the same problem is always going to end in a better result than a single person. I would much rather pair program everything I do. I can't, unfortunately. But every time I do, it always ends up being better. So get feedback, no matter the form. So we talked about envisioning a goal. We talked about planning, how to get there. So we're going to talk about iteration, and we've talked about that a little bit already. So what are your priorities? Like what matters when you're making a game? To me, and I've stuck with this for a few years, and I think it's stuck, and I've never changed it. It's 2 questions. Does it work? Do people get it? Those are the only 2 questions you need to answer, from my experience at least. Does it work? That's as simple as for educational games, for example, it's like, did the student or learner know about X after you like taught them X in the game, basically? I don't know, that's a bad way to describe it, but for you guys, it might just be you're making an arena shooter or something, and like, are people able to like move the character around, shoot each other? Are they frustrated by that? Does it work? Question 2, do people get it? This is vital. Probably the largest struggle I have in any of my games is I totally understand how to play my games because I made them. No one else knows how to play my games. They have like no clue. People with barely any game literacy are playing my games all the time, and that helps me understand what is just not obvious. Making things obvious is the best way to succeed. Making your game accessible and fun for everybody. It's fine if you want to make niche games or games that cater to some hardcore crowd. And when I say that, I guess let's just go back to the arena shooter idea. That game's been implemented 100 times, throughout history. Quake, Unreal Tournament, whatever, Call of Duty. People who play that game will totally understand how to play your game. It's obvious. So don't test your game on that, right? Test it with somebody who doesn't have the slightest idea of what's going on. And that's super important at my company because we make really weird stuff. If I need to make a game teaching some kid about cell biology, I'm not going to make an FPS. Like I don't know how that applies in any way, shape, or form to the goal of teaching somebody about biology. I could do something, it's not going to work that way.
The one cells have to shoot their way out of the other cells.
Right, but and it's like we just came up with a bunch of ideas in our heads about what we could do with an FPS in biology, and that's certainly true. It doesn't work at Filament though because what the game mechanics should express what the person's trying to learn. Okay, if you make a game about shooting things, that's all they're learning, to shoot things. Okay, they're not learning about biology. That's an important distinction, and not everybody understands that. We want to look at that here. So here's some questions that I ask myself when I'm having my game play tested by people. Again, there's a lot of different types of tests you could run. The best kind are when you understand what questions you want to ask before you even test it. Sometimes you don't know what questions to ask, and that's fine. But again, any meeting or get together that you have with your team should have an outcome, and playtesting is no different. You need to understand how to find the answers to these questions, right? That's what a playtest is for, else it's just a waste of time. Anybody know what game this is? Nope. Nope. It's EVE Online. That's okay. So I'm pointing out the tutorial here. It's in the lower right-hand corner. This was before they understood what it means to make a tutorial. CCP Games, the makers of EVE Online, it's a massive multiplayer online game where you fly a spaceship around and you collect resources, shoot other people, etc. They didn't implement any sort of help system at all when they first launched their game. And a lot of people did not understand how to play it because EVE is very hands-off, it's very hardcore. And that was fine for a while, right? They got all the hardcore players that came in, understood because of their backlog of literacy. That is I've played a bunch of games that are similar. I know how to play this game. It's a little different, but I can learn my way around it. But this was right before World of Warcraft blew up. World of Warcraft blew up because it was accessible. The tutorial was super obvious. Things were made clear and apparent to every player, no matter their literacy. So I just wanted to show that this isn't the tutorial now. I should have taken a screenshot of what the tutorial system is now. But EVE had to iterate, okay? They shipped their game. They were done. But they realized, hey, we're missing a huge chunk of our market because nobody understands how to play our super complex, super overbearing game. And they had to work on this again and again and again and again. And the only way they could is by bringing in fresh people who had no idea what it was they were going to be testing that day, sit them down at a computer, be like, play this game. And if they couldn't figure it out, they still had things to work on. So here's 2 other screenshots from a game that I made. This one was in HTML5 using Canvas. So on the left, we have my prototype. And this prototype was developed in order to answer my 2 questions. Okay. Does it work? Do people get it? And they did. Okay. That's awesome because I wouldn't have made the game on the right had our assumptions been incorrect. We got really lucky here, but I just wanted to show you that the point of this game is to take some large polygon or shape and cut it up into fractions. Okay, you can, maybe the more clever among you can figure that out from the screenshot on the right. And in testing, I just needed to implement the system as quickly as I could. And what I wanted to answer was like, do I understand that I'm splitting these 2 shapes apart? Can I tell the difference between 2 shapes? Is it fun to slice them? That's what the player does here. It's like Fruit Ninja or something. They just slice the shape apart. And luckily we didn't have to iterate in any way to like break these links here that you see with the line going through it or anything like that. It worked and people understood it. Everybody I gave this prototype to, they're like, oh, totally get it. Like it was just natural for them. And that's cool because I didn't make a tutorial. Some things are really hard to answer, and I'm not saying you'll always be like, hey, random person on the street play my game, and then they understand it without a tutorial. Sometimes it's the hardest. We don't need tutorials. That's fine. If you look on the screenshot on the right, though, you'll see some things that we changed, over time. One, the number line in the lower left-hand corner. That took a while to figure out. That's just an artifact from how teachers teach fractions to third and 4th graders. I didn't remember. I don't know what that is. And the other thing you see is the little notches in the shape. So it was really cool. This is one big solid shape. I can make any configuration that I wanted. However, the one constraint I had was I always need to be able to cut along these even lines, okay, so that we can make even fractions among this big shape and the little shapes. And that was important because what we had set out to do previously was I could cut the shape wherever I wanted, but then it became a game of like, one shape has 49% of the area and the other shape has 51%. Like, are they equal or not? Maybe I could fudge the numbers there. But once people started getting really clever and like, I'm gonna slice off a little corner of the shape. It was just like, this isn't fun. They're not playing the game how, and I shouldn't even say this, how we intend. But again, here we have the goal of teaching somebody something. Never tell someone that they're playing your game. So we put these little notches in and players can understand right away that that's where they can do that. And if not, they figure it out very quickly. So iterating, all boiled down, along with those 2 questions you want to answer, is just about collecting feedback and then prioritizing your list of tasks based on evidence, okay? It's one thing for you all to argue amongst yourselves in your group about your game and be like, I think sword fighting is most important. And somebody else is like, I think using shields is important. Ask somebody else, right? Have people play your game. Ask them what they think will make that game better. I'm not saying they're the expert, but if they're your players, listen to them, okay? That's going to make a successful game. So pivoting. This isn't obvious to everyone, and it's like maybe an enigma what I mean by pivoting, but I do just mean the action, the physical action of stopping pivoting. And in game development, that is, we've been going in some direction, we've been implementing some vision for quite some time, and maybe something's just not working. It's not working again, it's not working again. We've iterated on this thing a million times, and we haven't figured it out. And then suddenly someone has a brilliant idea. Maybe it's a tester, maybe it's someone on your team. Maybe together you just come up with something completely different, and that's fine. Sometimes the only way to succeed is to pivot. And I would like look at Titan to Overwatch as an example of pivoting. Okay, that game wasn't going to work out. In the example of Ghost, they didn't pivot. They were just like, forget it. We can't save this. Maybe someday they will. But Titan was definitely a pivot. It was a pivot from an open world MMO to, lack of a better description, of TF2 like FPS. And that's fine. Save their game, right? They realize what we're making is not fun. We need to change something. It needs to be drastic. My guess is with Overwatch, and again, these aren't facts or anything. I'm just guessing. They probably had the team deathmatch stuff implemented previously, and they're like, "This is what everybody plays. This is the funnest part of the game. Let's just make this game." That's pivoting. Let's see. We pivot. We try not to pivot very often because it's very expensive, right? You don't want to like implement your entire. You don't want to work in a game for 10 years and then pivot. If you have more money than God, and Activision Blizzard does, you can do that. That's fine. Pivot every day. You won't run out of money. Filament can't, right? We're 45 people. We do not have a publisher. We're a private company. We get our funding from a large assortment of clients and from the profits working on their games for them. We make our own games. When we pivot our own, like, I don't think we've ever pivoted a client game because usually the client's like, I want X. I'm not going to change my mind. We won't get into that today. But when we're working on our own games, we're just like Blizzard. We don't want to like release something that's awful. Nobody uses, nobody plays, nobody buys. We're out of work. Instead, we take the hit. We realize, okay, this isn't working. Our last big pivot on our product was something we've been working on for an entire year. Okay, that's a long time for us. But we did it because we thought it was going to be best, and luckily we were fortunate enough to be able to do so. Oh boy. So I have just a story to share. Some of these stories people don't understand or know, and I've been talking about Blizzard a lot. But I'm going to talk about introversion. And really this is just an anecdote about listening to your audience. Okay. So introversion, some of you might be familiar with the games that they've made. Just an indie group of people, I think 3 most of the time. I just want to make games together out of school. They made Darwinia. They won a bunch of awards at IGDA for that, I believe. They worked on DEF CON. I played both of these games. DEF CON is pretty cool, and it was smartly scoped for 3 people to work on the game, right? Released on Steam, pretty successful for them, right? Your game doesn't have to be a massive success to support 3 people. Worked on the multiplayer version of Darwinia, and then they started working on some other projects in those 2 gap years there, and they ran out of money. I could be there in 2 years, I don't know. Maybe some of you will be successful with the first thing that you make and then run into this problem. Some of you might not ever get here or ever have to care about it because you're working in a large company and other people care about it. And that's great too. But this is a real issue. It was a real issue for them. They took a break for a long time, and they all came back and decided to work on an old game idea that they had, which was Prison Architect. So I'll give you guys a couple seconds to just read this paragraph. All right. So I bolded, the emphasis is mine. That's important, okay? We're talking about a game that was released early. It's buggy. It's not complete. So there's a bunch of features missing. And a game reviewer, someone who, large game studios just thrust their games and goodies on these people all the time to get awesome reviews, has played the crap out of this game. That's amazing, right? That's how you want your games to be. These people didn't just have a good idea. they listened to who their customers are. Okay. So here's some screenshots. And I don't have my notes here to talk about what alpha stages we were in, but I'll kind of just run over the gist of it. So they released early access. Prior to that, they released early access not on Steam, before I think that had been implemented. They came out with a broken, buggy, awful version of the game, but it was really compelling. People who love this kind of thing, like, were drawn to it, and they wanted to chip in. Like, they had ideas that were potentially better than game makers' ideas. And that's certainly true because they listened, and they started implementing, caring about things. They started prioritizing their list of tasks against what their customers said. And that's super helpful to make a game that's going to be successful. I'm talking about this right now really because I see green light and early access is something everybody in this room is capable of doing. Okay? Start a team, start working on a game. If it gets anywhere, it gets some traction. Is it good enough to release on Steam? I don't know. Submit it to Greenlight. Find out. If it is, and you guys are lucky enough and successful enough to get the votes that you need, the exposure that your game requires to be successful as a component, you're going to make a far better game by having thousands of people buy it, download it, play it, and tell you like what is awful about it. Because you don't know. So he released this game and he started releasing more and more patches. In every patch, he just prioritized that list of tasks. I'm talking about the main game developer here, the main program. And every sprint, and he would release a patch about every 2 weeks or so. This is philosophy. And that's awesome. That's like maximum community engagement. I would be hard pressed to release a version of my game every 2 weeks. Any game that I've ever worked on. He just kept working on the things that were important to his customers. So I think, let's see, here, I think we're looking at a movement map, but around this patch, he implemented Fog of War. Fog of War just mean I can't see places that I'm not at. It's all black and stuff. That wasn't a feature that existed in the game previously. Implemented it, changed the whole game. People hated it. People hated it a ton. The outcry was insane. And it's fine if you don't care about this game, is that the next week, he wasn't like, I'm gonna work on something cool. Like, he had to implement weapons. He hadn't implemented weapons. Or dogs, or like drug searches, or anything like super awesome at this point. I think if it was me, my natural inclination would be to always work on what I think is fun. So maybe I'd work on the tunneling and escape system. But people had a huge issue with Fog of War. So he drops everything, works on Fog of War the next week, right? Until he gets it to a point where people think it's fun and interesting. This GIF is so good. If you have it in your presentation twice, you will succeed. $8 million is nothing to sneeze at. I could buy a lot of sandwiches with that. That's all I do. So I'm just letting you guys know. That's 3 people working on a game for a long time, and it sucks, and it's a lot of hard work, and the ability to do that is probably crazy at times. Their company almost went under, but that's okay. You have the time now, use it, okay? Being done with school will be awesome. That's like a huge burden off of your shoulders, and you'll be out in the working world, working at your jobs, whatever. But while you're together, try and make as many things as you can. This is a screenshot I like of Tomb Raider. For a presentation that I talked about before, and that's just like, what do you need to focus on in games? And I just like the screenshot because there's so much beauty in this screenshot, and it took a long time to get here, and all these people work together, okay? A big element of this game really is like lighting, but it's not like they prioritize lighting at the top, and don't get this the wrong idea. Implemented the best lighting engine ever, and then started working on other things. They didn't understand what kind of lighting that they needed for Tomb Raider until the rest of the game was built too. So it's about building, think of your game as building a wall, okay, not columns. Columns is like, this week we're gonna do this work. The next week we're gonna do work that has nothing to do with the work that we just did. Really, it's like all those tasks that you're doing, implement them, complete them, but you want to build your whole game out before you start polishing everything, okay? Because you don't want to polish stuff that doesn't work. And that's where you waste money. That's where you waste time. These people are really smart. They made a beautiful game together. All right. So I didn't know where to put this stuff. So I'll just put it at the end. And really, this is some extra tips for you guys, things that I've learned that have taken a lot of failing to come to these conclusions. The first one, this is really important for everybody in this room. If you want to start your own game company, maybe it only applies in that case. Make a business plan, okay? 20 minutes, whatever. Do something. Most people don't understand what it takes to like run a business, and that's fine. Most people are accidental successes, okay? But coming up with a business plan with your teammates is a good way to start. Play, then polish. Like I just said about building the wall, that's like my go-to analogy. Build the complete game and iterate on those features as necessary, but don't start polishing until like you're sure this is gonna last. This is what matters. There's some things you can't answer until you've polished. That happens a lot to me, right? A playtester doesn't understand something, and we're like, oh, if it just had final art or had sounds, maybe there's a tutorial. We don't build those until the end. Then it would work. You just gotta weigh it, right? There's no right answer. You're gonna fail a lot, okay? In what ways, I don't know, that's unique to you guys. But I would say like, don't expect to make World of Warcraft while you're here at school. Don't expect to make Call of Duty while you're here at school. Don't expect to make those games when you're here at school, anything like that. There will be a lot of failure, but it's the difference between the people who succeed and those who don't are they keep trying, okay? And that's vital, especially when you've left this school. You gotta work your ass off to get a job, okay? Maybe it won't be in games, and that's fine. Maybe someday we'll get there. But I interview people all the time who have been out of school for a year, maybe a year and a half. They're still not making games. And I'm like, well, what have you done since then? They're like, look for jobs. That's great. But why haven't they been programming? Why haven't they been drawing? You just keep working at it, okay? What I don't want anybody in this room to do is to like send 50 applications the day you graduate with a whole bunch of generic cover letters and then get 50 denies, or maybe you could get 2 interviews or something and you fail at those because you didn't realize that there were like 1,000 other game developers out there who need jobs and they have more experience than you, better portfolios, maybe they've shipped a bunch of titles and those companies chose those people over you. It happens all the time, okay? Don't give up that first month out of school and you're like, well, it didn't happen, and then you're still working where you worked and it's fine because you pay your bills, etc. Keep working at it. My other tip, and it's not on here, but when you're applying, make sure it's to a place you want to work and then go all out on that company, okay? I can't stress that enough. It is a lot of work. I hated applying to so many places when I had graduated, but it's vital that you like put your best effort forward on every application. There were certainly like jobs that I probably just mass, like here's my portfolio and a cover letter where I've deleted some company's name and wrote in that company's name. But I'm sure I didn't get a job there because that's exactly what I did, right? I got my job at Filament because I made them a game. That was awesome. Only one other applicant has ever done that in the history of has made a game specifically to get a job at that company. Those people succeed though, okay? Some anecdotes from DigiPen. The people who made an Oracular Drop when I had first gone there, the entire team got hired at Valve and made Portal, okay? Maybe you've heard of it. It's not like they made that game for Valve, right? It's a little different of an example, but I think it kind of applies in the same sense. The people who are making something for that company, or like that company likes, what that company does, that company just looks at their example and it's like, wow, well, you're already doing it. You definitely have a job here, right? If they're hiring. let's see. And then team I graduated with made a game called Tag. And it was a game where you ran around with a special gun that could shoot paint on the ground. Some paint made you run faster. Some paint made you bounce. Some paint maybe it was frictionless or something like that. They all got hired at Valve. They made 42. So it's just like, when I say go all in on that company, like try your hardest on the company's going to work at, okay? Maybe don't try for Valve right away. Because they hire experienced game developers. Sometimes there's these one-off chances of getting hired for sure. But if it's a company you really want to work for, you just send them that generic application. Show them that you can be an asset at their company, right? I made a game, and my company was like, well, that's what we need some people to do, is make games just like that for us. So I got hired. And there were probably, I think, 120 other applicants for the job that I got. Before you leave school, this first bullet point is super vital, okay? Learn how to teach yourself. If I learned anything in college, it was that, okay? I didn't learn how to program there. I didn't learn how to do math, physics, whatever. I learned how to teach myself what I needed to know to get the job done. And that takes a lot of creativity, resources, just knowing like where to look. Google's a great place to start if you're programming. But, you know, anecdote, I guess, when I got hired at the job that I currently do, I was a classically trained, as I like to say, C++ programmer. I had worked in C++ for 7 years. I thought I was going to work in AAA games, writing C++. Day one of my first job out of school, I worked in ActionScript. Okay? I didn't know ActionScript at all, but I didn't know how to learn it. Since then, I've used 12 other languages professionally. Okay? Every day it's a little different. Some of the wild days, I'll like write 3 different languages. That gets really confusing, but you need to be able to learn how to do that. And it's easy. Don't get like deer in headlights because it's new technology or a new tool that you haven't used, right? For you artists, if you know Photoshop, branch out, or at least understand that you're gonna have to, right? Paint shop side. If you know Maya, like be prepared if you know 3ds Max or vice versa, right? Wherever you get a job, you're gonna have to learn how to make things their way, and however their way is not gonna be their way for long. Okay. At Filament, we have our primary language at first was C++, and using Torque Engine. We moved to ActionScript and Flash. Then we moved to JavaScript and HTML5. We've moved to TypeScript, which is a compiled, strongly typed version of JavaScript. We've made some games in Objective-C, Lua, and we have a Unity team in-house now, and I think our goal within the next year is to make just Unity games in C#. Okay. So you gotta learn how to teach yourself new things. Solve problems now, okay? So back to what I was talking about when it comes to graduating and then like applying and then just stopping your dream. Don't do that. It's really tempting. So put in the effort now. It's super hard, and I know you are all full-time students, but sacrificing some of your free time in order to make your project better, or work on, you know, a solution for a class or something, you know, maybe it's programming or it's an art class, whatever, work on that thing, okay? Because that's your portfolio. That's your like body of knowledge. The only reason my breadth of experience is so large is because I've solved so many problems. And that makes what I do professionally a lot easier, right? You want to show up day one, be that completely needs the handheld all the way. Let's see, the last tip. So whatever you pick, if you're going to enter the games industry, you're going to do a lot of it. You can certainly switch jobs. That's not unheard of whatsoever. Back to that whole, we're programmers, we're artists, anybody a producer? No. I'm sure at least one of us in this room is going to be a producer someday. this is my personal opinion, but the best producers are people who either had a drive to do just that forever, just like some of us when it comes to programming or art. But a large majority of them are people who've made products and games, and a lot of them, right? If the job of a producer is to lead a team in making a game, well, they better know how that's done. And I think the best ones come from the disciplines that are actually developers working on games. A producer is not necessarily like working on the game itself; they're enabling the team to do so. Same with QA, right? A lot of people enter quality assurance as like testers or something, and that's a whole career. You can be awesome at that. It's also a good foot in the door for doing what you really want to do. I'm not recommending that whatsoever, but people switch jobs is my point. I will probably never be an artist though, for example. That's like that's a learned skill, and vice versa. But you're gonna be doing a lot of it, so just make sure it's working, right? I'm done. Yes.
Where did you get all of those little bees?
The bees, yeah. So those were drawn by one of our lovely in-house artists, Chenya Chang. The bees are official mascot at filming nowadays. So they're included in a lot of documentation. I looked at those. The source code. Yep,
So you make music, that's not pretty easy.
Ableton.
What's your SoundCloud?
Bonjour. Bonjwa.
It was on the PowerPoint there.
I know, I like barely missed it. I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What was it like working at Digipen?
Digipen was awesome. I think when I talk about school, I feel like I was lucky in that I knew I wanted to be a game developer early. Okay, a lot of people aren't so lucky. They have no idea what they want to do at high school, and that's fine. You don't have to. I think it sets you up a lot better in life because you just worked on that your passion a bit longer than your peers. Going to Digipen was definitely like that. Even though I knew that's what I wanted to do, and that was the school I wanted to go to, and I got into it, there were a lot of people that attended that school that had been programming far longer than I. So it was a great community. It was a good environment to learn everything in. I think a lot of schools. Now, when I went, Digipen was like. I mean, I don't know. Don't put a lot of faith in the Princeton Review or anything like that, but. I would say Digipen is like one of the top game development schools, and that's probably still true. But I mean, I haven't gone there or any other place. I weighed that against Full Sail. I think if I had to choose again, it's less about the place you go, even though the environment really helps. And it's just more about what you put into school. Okay, I see that all the time, especially down in Madison. I'm a program advisor at MMI, Madison Media. There's one in Minneapolis as well. I developed their game program. I worked a little bit on their art and animation program, and I built their mobile application development program for them. That is like, what classes do people take, what time do they take them, etc. Anybody can get into MMI, pretty much. You got the money. And so what I see all the time is students who care and students who don't care, frankly. Those that don't are bottom tier candidates for game development jobs. They're never going to be in the industry ever. But my point is, you can go to a school like MMI, just like a for-profit, and that's what Digipen was really. School that might not be the best, maybe there's better out there, but it's what you put into it. And you don't need to have a bunch of friends help you make the best game ever. Having support helps, for sure. I'm sure a lot of you struggle in your personal lives for whatever reasons you have, but you try your hardest, and you can be just as successful as someone who went to the best game school in the world, whatever that is. And I firmly believe that. if I was to go back to school or hindsight or whatever you want to call it, I don't think I'd need to go to Penn to be as successful as I have. It's just where I ended up. Sorry, that's a lot.
Where are you originally from?
I have lived in 6 different states. And they all border Canada. I'm not sure about that one, but I actually went to high school here in Wisconsin. From the boonies, probably like a lot of you. I live in Madison now. I went to school in Seattle. Lived in Idaho, lived in Michigan. So, everywhere.
Out of all the tips you gave today, or any other ones you can think of, what would you say is the most important, like number one above anything else?
Yeah. Build things right now. Okay. Because if you don't build things, if you don't show me, like I look at resumes every day. Okay. I have interviewed a lot of people that are just out of college, a lot of people that are veterans in the news industry, and people who get hired are people who can show examples of the work that they're capable of. Okay. Don't go to school, even if it's for computer science. Like, see, your degree doesn't matter, really, but you know, as an example,
That's not hard to solve for you.
you know, if you go, this is a great classic example. If you go to UW-Madison, I'm going to pick on them for a little bit. Stout has a much better game program. If you go there for computer science, you can learn how to be a programmer, right? Or you're gonna learn how to be a game developer? Not necessarily, but again, think back to what I said, schools would make of it. So some of the best game programmers in the world could probably definitely come out of that school. It's not about what the school's teaching. But when it comes to making something, I've seen people apply and they're computer science graduates, but all they have is their assignments from the classes, right? It's gonna be, it might be a little easier for like the art crowd if your assignments are like really geared towards your portfolio. But you know, as a CS major, just learning how to program, and that's a lot in and of itself, is not enough to get a job. So my number one tip is to just build things. Okay, it doesn't have to be full games, but they should be good. They should be polished. You don't have to have artists on your team or anything like that. And this applies to free artists too, like build things, right? Maybe if all you want to do is like be an illustrator or something, just like draw. Like draw every day until your hand hurts, okay? If you don't, you're not going to be good. Like the artists I've met out there are phenomenal. They would kick your ass, okay? Those are the people you're competing with to get jobs. Sure, you're going for the entry-level positions, but people get laid off all the time, right? Human Head's a great example of a company that has had its ups and downs right here in Madison, Wisconsin. You know, when Human Head goes through trouble and I'm hiring for programmers, suddenly I've got like 3 programmers from Human Head in my applicants, you know, inbox, along all of you guys. Who am I going to hire, right? Maybe that's a little unfair to make the comparison, but what you can do in your favor is build things right now, okay? Draw, code, and your assignments aren't being cut. Okay, that's just you learning how to apply your skills. Now go do so, right? You know, everybody this weekend should, if you haven't, download Unity. Start following tutorials, whatever. You know, I have some choice words about Unity and just investing all your time into that skill or that tool because it's not going to be around forever, right? I'd rather get a programmer that knows how to program instead of just script in someone else's image. But the point is, everybody here can go download that image, right? You don't know how to program, that's fine. You can build stuff. You need to be able to demonstrate that you can do the job that I'm hiring you for. The number one thing. And if you don't have examples of doing what I'm going to hire you for, which is game development, asset generation, whatever, I'm not going to hire you. It's super simple. So. Yeah.
How do you combat burnout?
Combat burnout. Yeah. So I got it easy. My projects are small. I think there's a couple different types of developers out there, and it's aligned with project size. I think for me, and I'm just speaking from my own personal experience. I do not think I would do well working at Raven because they work on the same project for 3 years. That's burnout to me. I don't want to be working on the same game that I was 3 years ago. I want to be doing something new. Now, there's other challenges that those people really love and attach themselves to, right? Which is like making the best damn system that they were assigned to ever. And their code's gonna be phenomenal, right? It's gonna be like way better than the average like quality of code that I ever write. But I build such a quantity of things in a year that's what I love doing. So I combat burnout by having a new project on average every 3 to 4 months. Maybe 4 months or so is the average. And that does it for me. Also being responsible for every system in the game. Our teams are very small. Our average project can be completed by a single programmer, and that takes a very different person than working on a AAA title with 200 programmers. Okay, what you're responsible for is a much higher bar of quality, but a much smaller system, versus being a generalist, jack of all trades. Hey, on Monday I was working on the sound engine. On Tuesday I had to fix a bug in the rendering code, right? And those people are valuable for different reasons, right? I think you can succeed as a generalist programmer nowadays much better than you could previously. If you're trying to aim for a place like Raven or something, specialize. Okay, that's my tips to you. Specialize because they've got a bunch of people that can write all the same kind of code you can. What's the code that, or assets? What are you good at drawing, right? For example, what are you best at? Are you better than everybody else out there? Because that's what they need. Me, I need somebody who can do everything, because our project is that size. I was just to finish my thought. I think it's much more viable nowadays because of the indie game scene, because of mobile social gaming. Like those projects are much smaller than what we're used to seeing, which is like big AAA titles that games on average used to take like 5 years to make a huge, awesome game. That's burnout. F that. Yeah.
How do you deal with conflict in groups when just two people just won't agree with each other?
So I think it's rare that would happen because ideally you're meeting people that have that sort of perspective or that attitude out during the application process to begin with, right? I'm only hiring people who can play both cards, right? We don't always make the smart hire though, and someone can slip through and does exactly that. I think just to handle, some conflict that you might have on your team, people that don't agree, just take time. I think in my own life, it's just like take a day and don't worry about that thing. And you'll come back and you'll be different, later, and you'll resolve your conflict. That's a real answer. I guess if you had to address it right away, you always get a mediator. Leaders are really good at that, right? If there's somebody on your team who is that natural leader, who's kind of not in charge of everybody on your team, but just can resolve conflicts. That's great. That's what that person's there for. That's where I like stress feedback too. If you're like arguing about game design or something, really one of the things I argue about all the time. If I have evidence, how do you argue against evidence? It's difficult. You got to battle against evidence, but just be reasonable, right? Be able to change your worldview at a moment's notice in light of new information. Yeah.
Can you talk about your experience with Ryan?
I can give you general experience on applying to AAA versus like a smaller studio, I guess. And it goes back to specialization. Know what kind of job you're applying for, and like hit a home run there. at a place like Riot or Blizzard or Raven, big companies that have a lot of people, you need to be the best at whatever it is you're setting out to do. And that goes back to me saying, like, make sure you like doing that thing. And I'll use as an example, like, maybe you want to work on graphics, and that's it. That's what you're going to need to do to get a job at a place like that. Because for myself, it's very difficult. I would go to a place like that and I'd say, hey, I'm me. I have a lot of experience. I've made like 30 games. I've coded pretty much any system you could possibly think of. I've made 4 different graphics engines. I've implemented physics half a dozen times and made every kind of input and game mechanic possible. I've done everything, okay? Pretty much. But none of those things were the best in the industry, if that makes sense, right? Like if I make a sound system, it just served its purpose at the time. I implemented it, it can play sounds, maybe it does some fancy things really well, whatever. But the person at Raven, Blizzard, Riot that's implementing the sound engine knows so much about sound, it's blown their minds, right? And how to program that specific thing. And that's who they're hiring for, because their teams are so large that they can have the luxury of having specialists on their team. I explained it to a student at MMI once who wanted to be a lighter, okay? Someone who places lights in scenes. And I was like, well, that's pretty specialist, right? And that's good. Then I was like, do you realize what you're trying to accomplish right now? Which is getting a job as a lighter. I'm like, think about how many jobs are open each year as a level lighter. Someone who places lights in life. It's an important job, and people do just that at companies, yes. But I don't know, like, yes, like maybe 4, maybe 5 open positions a year doing that weird little niche thing. I was like, are you the best at it? He wasn't. He knew that. I'm like, well, you're not getting a job. You got to be the best. Because if I was like running a 200-person game team, I would hire the best lighter. If budget wasn't an issue. But, so anyways, I guess that's my anecdotes there. Something else, I guess, I would share is, as I see technology change over time, is things are becoming much more service-based, which is previously we would make a game and then we'd ship it and you never have to support it. It's just out there. People could buy it, they could play it. Usually it's not connected to the internet or anything like that. Nowadays, it's like, that's the only compelling thing. Just playing with friends, family, whatever. And a lot of games are built on services. And service development is a different beast. It takes a different type of way of thinking about the same kind of problems because that service is always up. You have millions of players potentially on your service at any one time connected to it, getting data, saving data, and you need to support that product over time, and that gets really tricky. That's something I don't have much experience in, for example. So I'm throwing it out there. Like Riot, in particular, is a service company. They're not a games company. I'll tell you that. I don't know if anybody there would disagree. They're a service company. So they're hiring people who have experience in service, delivering services. When I say service, again, I just mean like always online. People are connecting. People are using massive amounts of data, right? So they're hiring like computer scientists with PhDs who like study databases and how to efficiently put data in, and find the right data and pull it out because you've got a player base of 10 million people. Things can't be slow. I don't know how to do that. Like I could learn, right? And hopefully everybody in Zoom can like learn how to do whatever they need to do. But it's different now, I guess, with games like that because now you're competing with programmers who aren't necessarily game developers, but they're working on good games. Yeah.
So do you have any advice for like artists with a technical skill or interest or vice versa?
Yeah.
Or,
what kind of technical skill?
I'm in a art major or whatever, but like I'll program my own game jam games and that sort of stuff.
Oh, that's phenomenal, right?
Yeah,
Just being a game developer is good. I think the problem you're gonna run up against, and I know I stress to everybody here to like just make stuff, is know who you're talking to when you're applying for jobs. So some of the best candidates that I see are people who can do everything. But then they apply for game engineering, and I'm like, I don't know if you're really engineering. Like, you can sort of program, but like, are you gonna be programming 3 years from now? Right? That's what I want. I want somebody who's got this like one track mind. That's why hiring for QA nowadays is kind of hard, because we really want career QA analysts, not someone who's like, well, I'm an artist, and like, do you think like I could get a job here if I take this QA position and I want to do art or something? Like, no. So my advice, I guess, is like keep making things, right? That'll only serve you well. But make things in a way that demonstrates the main skill that you're trying to develop. So if it's art, like make games that are very simple when it comes to programming that exemplify your ability as an artist. Because you don't want to confuse potential employer. You don't want to be like, I'm applying for this art position, but you're really a programmer. Or you're applying for a programming position, really doing this. That will not work. So you can make your own game stuff. And that's what it takes to be successful on your own. You gotta be able to do a little bit of everything. So the other thing I would say for you is you can merge those two skills really well at some of the larger companies. One of the smartest people I ever met was a technical artist from 343 Industries. Worked on Halo 4, Halo 5. Guy was a technical artist. Okay, so much more brilliant than I am in terms of like understanding math that like blew my mind. Right, this guy could like run circles around me. He was an artist. What he did is he just wrote shaders for them. He manipulated pixels on the screen in such ways that he would do really fancy effects really cheaply. That's its own type of job. It's its own type of discipline, right? Graphics shader programmer. But my point is that person was an artist, and it was their art skill that allows them to be best, like at shader programming, right? Something I'd have to level up is my aesthetic sense if I want to do something. Like I don't know. It's all about like understanding, replicating real life when it comes to making graphics. So. Yeah.
I have 2 questions. First one, what program did you study at?
I got a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science. My major was real-time interactive simulation. It's a mouthful, but essentially it just means real-time. So like when I give input to the program, something gives me feedback immediately. Typically those are games. Interactive simulation means I can interact with it in whatever way. In sim, there's a bunch of algorithms in the background that represent something I'm trying to achieve. Altogether, real-time interactive simulation is a fancy way of saying games. I got a minor in math as well. It was real close to the minor in physics.
All right, and then second question, what's your opinion on the importance of someone on a game team that's
Educated in sound design?
Like they had some classes in it or studied it.
What are they doing on the game team?
Like you mentioned, maybe like a government sound method.
Oh, okay.
Implementing.
I mean, I don't know if I have an opinion on someone with particular knowledge in some field if there's someone else. But I don't know. Can you like rephrase your question? Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So. I'm really familiar with TPEN and their new programs, the engineering and sound design programs.
Oh.
That was the alternative.
Yeah.
So coming here and I'm just still like
on the fence.
Yeah.
If that was the right decision or not.
Yeah.
I would need to know more about that particular program, I guess, before I can weigh in on it. Is that like sound design? Is that learning to be a sound engineer, not necessarily a programmer?
It was mostly programming, but then you were going to use your programming instead of they described it as instead of writing a game engine, we're writing a sound engine.
Yeah. So you can definitely find a job in game development. A lot of studios use third-party software though. A lot of your favorite games are built in Unreal Engine. They're built in Unity Engine. They're built in what's the other popular one? It doesn't matter. What's that?
Private.
Yeah, that's one. They're probably using like third-party sound engines. So if you're looking for a job as like a sound engineer or something, I don't know if that's exactly what you're asking about, but my opinion would be like, if your passion is manipulating sound, basically, or knowing a lot about sound, there's a lot of other jobs out there that aren't just game development. I don't know if game development's really going to fulfill that passion. I would look at places like SoundCloud, awesome company to work for. They're everywhere across the world. There's a lot of companies out there that just make sound tools in general, and it's like that's what you'd be working on probably. You'd be working on sound engines that game companies purchase and implement into their own engines, or you'd be working on tools that musicians use to synthesize sounds in their productions. You could also get a job. You pretty much get a job anywhere that required sound expertise. Somebody that I worked with recently had a PhD in acoustics. Okay, what do? They work for the government, the Department of Defense, researching the acoustics of underwater scenes and how sonar propagates in different depths in water, basically. So, and that's like super interesting to me. I mean, I'm not a sound engineer or anything like that, but the knowledge is being applied directly, right? It's like there's so many things out there that involve that kind of mind, and that's fun. I can't say anything more because it's confidential. So,
Yeah. Is there anything you can say about your trip to the White House and experience?
oh, that one. Yeah, that was a different trip.
Oh.
Um,
I assume that was the same trip.
Yeah. No, if you saw the picture earlier, it was me hanging out with the creators of Angry Birds. One of the few times I get to associate with other game developers. Except for like GDC. Drunk and debauchery. So the White House had invited us down for a game jam, just called the White House Game Jam. Not very creative. But that's why they invited us, right, to be creative for them. And what they cared about is something that you're going to see a lot of, especially in your careers, is just like where games make an impact. Okay, right now it's just used for entertainment. We're right on the threshold of like how much of games are classified as art, right? And a lot of us would say like it's fully art right now. A lot of us would say like no, it's not art. We'll probably see that change in our lifetime. We're also going to see is the application of games. Where are they in your life, right? How are they used to teach people things, for example? The White House is super interested in that. The Department of Education is in particular because they know it's the future. They know there's going to be a wide application for games. Talking about acoustics and sound underwater, that's important to our military, for example, because they need sonar operators. They need to understand where enemy submarines are. Is that an enemy submarine? Is it a whale? Right. A really great way to teach that is by building a game, and they understand that. And so you're going to see a lot of games, a lot of simulations that train people in very game-like ways now and in the future. And that's a lot of opportunity for you guys to have jobs. Right? To work on things you're interested in, right? It doesn't have to be just a game for entertainment. It can serve a larger purpose. So, sorry, they invited us down, and we competed with about 100 other people. And we just made games for the weekend. The CTO of the United States was there, a bunch of Department of Education people, Smithsonian, NOAA, etc. And then, yeah, I don't know, we got to go to the White House and show all our games, and that was cool. No, I didn't meet Obama.
No one would see that.
Right. Our game was pretty awesome, actually. yeah, that was about it. And it really is just an experiment. I think they'll do it next year. Some student teams went. So, we were talking about game jams earlier. That's like one of the best outlets for you guys, to use. It's a lot of hard work. I both love and loathe game jams just because as a programmer, it's just work, present arts. Just work. I do this all day.
Are you doing the global game jam this year?
I probably won't because I like weekends. I've judged it before, but I don't know. You guys should go.
We're hosting.
You should. Well, I guess it's out. So yeah, go. Hopefully everybody in this room shows up and make something awesome. You don't have to make like a program game either. You just make a bunch of paper assets and paper playtests for game. You do that a lot. We make board games. Board game one, I think it was awesome. It was about being the Mars rover and dodging meteors. Hopefully I answered your question earlier about sound.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's think about it. Yeah.
How do you feel about VR right now? Because you mentioned how like everything's advancing and games are changing.
I don't know. I have an Oculus Rift. I haven't done anything with it yet. Really. I should use it more often, but I don't. I think until it becomes until the barrier to entry is a lot lower, it's not working. That's just that's reality. Okay, I don't even think that's but I'm sure it's the future where everything's on our phone now, right? Even some of the biggest games that we play. Hearthstone will be on our phones. And as they get better, I think we'll just see peripherals change in general. People knew about this thing a long time ago, right? And it just took until the last 10 years to reality. We've thought of things in the past that you wear in your face. Machines maybe you buy in and you get jacked into the matrix, right? I'm sure it's gonna happen someday if we all survive. Keep making babies. So I don't know. I guess my opinion is sorry. It was whatever. I think it's super awesome. John Carmack joining Oculus is amazing. The best thing that company could have ever have going for it. Being purchased by Facebook is totally fine. Whatever. They don't have to worry about funding anymore. So that's awesome. I think they're in good hands to pave the way for the future of not just the games, but how we interact with our environments. They're not the only company to watch out for, though, of course, because you just say virtual reality. You didn't even say Oculus. I may have an opportunity in the future to work on holographic table very soon, actually at work. And that's not in a game entertainment sense. That's teaching people stuff. How do we manipulate our environment? I think it'll naturally be the next step. And I think there will be a time where where this gets replaced, right? We're not opening up some shell and typing into some screen. It's gonna be some weird combination of Google Glass, implanted in your brain. I don't know. Everything will be virtual reality at that point.
Permanent.
Yeah, exactly. Being able to project things in your environment. I don't know. That's forward thinking, but if we all got together and worked really hard for a couple of weeks, we could do something now and just be bulky and awful and nobody would use it. Right? So. Yeah.
GDC's coming up, and I'm just curious. You hinted at company focusing attention more at one particular company as opposed to all of them.
Yes. Right.
Do you have any other tips for people going?
Yeah. I just say focus on the company you want, because if it's the job you want, go all in on it, right? And I would rather I feel like you're gonna be more, and I say the words "feel like" because it's a lot. I don't have data backing up what I'm gonna say, but that is people who go all in on the jobs that they want are gonna get them with people who just send some generic thing and maybe they have the same skills and the same level of portfolio or something, but something I look at Hillman, for example, is people who care about education. Okay, sometimes that has to change depending on the hiring needs. But if I have 2 fully qualified engineers that I'm hiring, and one has made serious games before, games for impact, they care about education, then they can say something about it, or take some classes about it, whatever, that person's gonna get a job, right? But my assumption is they want this job way more than another person, and maybe hopefully they're showing that to me, but they're demonstrating it in some way. Going to GDC, for example, for job prospects, totally cool, right? I mean, it's expensive to fly out to San Fran and go to GDC, especially. And they have a huge job fair there. I've been there before, not as a job seeker, so that was super comfortable for me. I just chatted up people who worked on technology that I worked on and tried to figure out how much they actually need. I would say like talk to everybody there, right? But I can see through people really quickly and then just talking to me for a job versus like, I want and this is where I want to go, right? When I get a cover letter that says like, I got this week, film games, Seattle, Washington, blah, 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 blah. Like, I'm like, that's not where we are. Like, good job, right?
Step 1.
Why give this guy the job? Maybe they're awesome at it, he or she, but I'd rather have someone who wants to be there. You hire character, you train skill.
And with that, we're actually at the end of our time frame. If you want to stay around to answer more questions, that's up to you.
Oh, yeah.
But otherwise, IGDA is officially adjourning the meeting. So big thank you to our Arturo. Next Monday, we partnered with AMCS Club to have another speaker because it's just we're gonna have speakers, I guess, like every day now. That's our new thing, I guess.
We're not entirely sure who it is.
They're from
This
Wide.
one is aiming more towards programmers, unfortunately. So the
AMCS Club.
Or the AMCS.
Yeah.
Major. About got this organized. So it's a software developer from Wyden. His boss refers to him as a rock star programmer. Then pretty good. But there's pizza. So even if you are
awesome. Hopefully everybody here learned. You actually have a really good turnout.
Yeah.
So it must be because of you.
you have to email Jackie that
Everybody just randomly do you.
to make sure that she knows how many people are there to
Yeah.